Hi, I'm Sam. Chances are, if you don't know me personally, and you're seeing this the week it comes out, you know me from some other project? Well, this isn't about that at all. I am the engineer at KTQA, a small, low-power FM radio station in Tacoma, Washington. Over the next few months, I intend to build out a complete radio station studio in this space. And I thought it would be nice to document the build on YouTube for your entertainment. Why would I do that? Well, for a number of reasons. First, this is a community radio station, and I thought this would be a community build-out, but community gatherings are a bad idea right now, so I thought this would be a good idea. Second, my favorite category of YouTube is people doing stuff. And hey, I can do stuff. Not particularly well, as you may find out, but, you know, I can. So, would you like to check out the space? This is my office, where I will have to keep a lot of FCC paperwork. Over here will be my desk, and over here will be my electronics workbench, for when I fix things that break, which will probably happen a lot. This is my natural habitat, a rack room, unfortunately completely bereft of computer or audio equipment at the moment. It does, however, have a washer and dryer hookup, but no drain. Mysterious. And this, of course, is our kitchenette, whatever you want to call it, complete with sink, microwave, audio equipment, and a refrigerator with a compressor that would really like to grow up to be a lawnmower engine. And this is a Super Famicom for inspiration. Can I help you? And this, the other side of the room with the Super Famicom in it, is going to be the main control point of the radio station. All the work is going to be done in here. So let's talk about how I'm going to do it. Well, first and foremost, my background is in IT and Unix. Broadcast engineering has always been sort of a side gig and a hobby of mine. So how I do things may not be the way you want to do them. This channel is for entertainment, not necessarily education. This is doubly true, as I'm an ardent supporter of free software, and I intend to use FOSS everywhere I can in this build. If that means an open source tool is unavailable, I intend to build one or write one. I'm also an avid Arch
Linux user.
Never mind that. Let's talk about some guidelines and how I build things. These are a lot of rules I apply to a bunch of stuff, so I thought I'd talk about it right now, because they're definitely going to be at play here, and it'll help you understand why I'm making some of the decisions that I'm making. Well, if it's not obvious, I'm not a video person at all. I'm an audio guy. I'm the world's worst cameraman. That's been verified by several people. But what we're doing here is a lot more visual, and so I thought it was time to go into the visual space somewhat here. So this is all experimentation for me. I'm still figuring out how to do this, and one thing I figured out is I hate teleprompters. I just not how I work. So that's gone. Let's see if this is better. So let's talk operational guidelines, hey? You know, how I build stuff, how I think about things, stuff like that. I've decided to codify them so that you can understand where I'm coming from when I make the decisions that I make, and maybe give me better pointers about how things are gonna go. So there's 8 of them because powers of 2 are good, and they'll appear over here. Yeah, over here. All right. So the first one is don't reinvent the wheel, which is a problem that a lot of software developers have. Me included once upon a time. But I try to use tools that exist, code that's written, hardware that's available now, rather than try to build stuff myself. It saves you a bunch of time. It allowed us to go from 0 to radio station really quickly for what's already operational for KTQA. And it's a thing that a lot of project managers say. Don't reinvent everything. Try to build and iterate on what already exists. Unless the wheel is square. Now, some software is perfect for what we need. Drop it in, configure it, good to go. Some of it could be made to work. And then there's software for one reason or another where all of the saved development time is lost in implementation time to basically shoehorn this thing that doesn't quite work into a pre-existing process or a process where it doesn't fit. And so when you realize that the wheel that you're working with is square and you have a flat road, maybe reinventing the wheel might be what you need to do. We've done this a couple times already. Now that's, obviously true in software, but it also has its own place in hardware. Like, for example, I have a ton of tube preamps, like 12 AX7s in them and stuff like that. Could I use them in this build? Absolutely. Should I use them in this build? The power requirements, the costs, and the maintenance complexity of managing tube preamps, it's not the right tool for the job. It's a square wheel. We need to go with something else. Fortunately, I have something else, but we'll talk about that later. Now, the third one is sort of a reminder for me of a thing that I tend to forget when I get real project-minded, and that's sunk time isn't. So a lot of people talk about sunk costs and the fallacy of sunk costs, but for me, the thing that really gets me going is sunk time. I've dropped 20 hours in a project or 40 hours in a project. If it's not going to go, drop it and move on to something that can. Move on. Because if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And if you try to force it to work, you're just creating pain down the line. And maybe this project is sunk here, but in some other time, in some other context, it could work for you. All right, the next one is be cheap and good. There's sort of like the three choices in everything development, was you can be good, you can be cheap, and you can be fast. So we aim for cheap and good. We need to be good because audio quality and broadcast is key, and we really need to really hit that mark where we can. And cheap because, well, this is a radio station with a budget of half of a shoestring, so we need to work with what we have. I also have a reputation for building functional stuff out of garbage, and I'd like to maintain that reputation as much as possible. But then, favor learning over cost. Like, for example, I bought this camera, I put together some lights out of stuff I had, and but then I spent a lot of stuff on mounting a lot of money and bought a lot of parts for mounting equipment to figure out how to make it work together, figure out a teleprompter I ended up really not using. But did I spend? I spent more than I needed, but I learned a lot of stuff on the way. I learned the nature of how the mount works for the camera, a little bit more than I already knew about lighting temperatures and LED lighting. And so that ended up being time worth the cost. And this is also a community radio station, and part of what we intend to do is teach people how to do radio stuff, both on the production side and on the engineering side. So, try to be cheap, but remember to leave some resources for education and learning, and, well, mistakes. Favor use ease over dev ease. Now, that sounds like a user experience or a user interface issue, but it's really not, especially since a lot of the software runs like sort of silently in the background. But that's just a reminder to not take shortcuts in development that'll end up working out poorly in implementation. So this next one is actually pretty big. That's favor domain inertia. Now, on the system side, that usually means don't make everything web-based because that's just the expectation. Try to stay in the domain that you're working in. And while that's true here, what's really true here is that we have sort of a split design in this studio, is that we've got really two parts, is that we have a lot of donated equipment that's really good and really useful and really analog. But then, for cost and for what I know and my knowledge, we have a lot of digital stuff going on. Our STL is digital. A lot of our equipment at the transmitter site, which is kind of off topic for this whole channel, is digital. But all the stuff that's going to be over here is going to be very analog. And what this means is that I'm going to try and solve analog problems in an analog way, and I'm going to try and solve digital problems in a very digital way. And the way this is going to work out is that there's actually going to be kind of a physical division right down the middle of the studio, where on this side we've got the analog, the world of the wom, 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 and then over here we have the digital side, the side of the beep, beep, boop, boop. And there will be, a lot of the work here will be done analog, and then it will be converted to digital once, and that's it. And then once it's digital, we try to solve things in a digital way. When it's analog, we try to solve it in an analog way. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit blurred because we're going to have digital, audio file players here for playing music and stuff like that. But for the most part, we want the transition from the board to the data stream to happen once and no hopping back and forth. And then the last one is use Unix Philosophy. Again, this is a software thing, but I find it works in a lot of places where you're building big projects. The model of a lot of software that we've been working with for community radio is sort of like the car factory model. It's a one-stop shop. Think of it like a car factory. It's a thing that eats car parts and poops cars, and magic happens in the middle. And it does everything. It handles streaming, it handles archiving, it handles scheduling, it handles automation picking, and all that stuff. But if that software ends up not working for you, you kind of have to drop the whole thing and start over. So what I've built so far has been taking those off-the-shelf components and then configuring them in a way to take small tools that do small tasks really well, and then configuring them to do larger tasks. And then if you need to do a similar task, you can just reconfigure those tools. So instead of a fat car factory model, it's more of a workshop model, where you go in your workshop and you've got your saws and your screwdrivers and your drills and all that stuff. And so that's what we're doing here. We're trying not to have stuff that does everything. Try to have something that does one thing, does it well, can be pulled out of the chain, fixed or improved, and then put back in the chain. So that's sort of a discussion of the philosophies I have for this build-out. Is it heavily influenced by software? Yeah, because software is what I do. And there's a lot of software involved in modern broadcasting. But there's definitely, as the channel goes on, you're going to be seeing a lot more hardware than software. Well, before I wrap this up, there's somebody I should thank. Robert over at Aging Wheels actually responded to an email of mine and gave me a bit of advice on how to do YouTube stuff, and sort of gave me a kick in the pants to get this started. Now, this video is coming out a lot later than I expected because the set of Total Recall visited Tacoma for a few days and set me back, but I'd like to thank him for the kick in the pants, even though he might not want to take credit given how things are turning out. And yeah, he also gave me another piece of advice. Now, I have, or rather had, a 2007 Ford F-150 pickup truck with the infamous Triton 5.4-liter engine in it. And it was bad. It was time for it to go. And I thought maybe I'd replace it with ambulance. I mean, ambulances are fun. Well, assuming you don't need to be in them for any particular reason, but it could be useful. It could be used as an RV, it could be used as a mobile studio, it could have use for other projects that I work on. It could do a lot of cool stuff, and it's a nice big vehicle with a lot of storage. It'd be great for working as well. And so I emailed asking him for his advice on it, and he gave me 2 words: do it. So what did I do? I went out and bought a base 2010 Honda Fit, a shrunken minivan. Now, I grant that he might not hate that choice too much because he seems to have a same soft spot for small cars like I do. Well, it was not what I thought I was going to get, I'll be honest with you, but it was suggested to me that a radio station might be enough project for me for now, and so I needed something that I could get work done in, and the Honda Fit does fit that bill, even if it's not a utility vehicle like a pickup truck. But that leaves me open to searching auctions and picking up a ambulance at a later date. So what am I going to do to the Fit? Probably nothing. I might replace the head unit with a Raspberry Pi, because it'd be fun to have a Spectrum analyzer in my car for when the radio station goes weird. I don't know. That's about all I got in mind. But thanks, Robert, for the advice, both vehicular and video. And that's all I've got for this video. Next time, I'm going to try and plow through as much of the IP side as I can. Alright, I'm back in the studio, where I sound good and you don't have to look at me. What you are looking at is a list of my current Patreons. Yes, this is my first YouTube video, but I've been a content producer in other places for going on a decade now, and I do have a Patreon, and without these people, I quite literally wouldn't be talking to you right now. Talking would be difficult. Thanks, everyone, for supporting me throughout 2020, before and hopefully beyond. Thanks a bunch, and I will see you on the next episode.